Yeah. Well, and so what happened was when I guess I was on that show, to tell you about off the record. I was on that show, and I was on as a fitness model, where I'd be like, Trish Stratus is on the cover, blah blah blah, and then we would talk about. And this sport was a sports show, so they liked having this chick who was like their go-to guest, when they could have a chick on who spoke about sports.
Okay. Was, right? Oh, you spoke about like all sports?
Yeah. So we talk about sports. It was generally a sports show, but we talk about issues and politics and stuff that was in.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah, I became their go-to as like a chick who knew sports, which is not as
common. Was that just on air, or was it also visual too?
What do you mean?
Was it audio and visual, or was it just audio?
Yeah, it was a TV show.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, it was a TV show. But then the TV show had a really great relationship with the WWE. So like they would have wrestlers on. And so they would be, and it was one of the main like sports shows, I guess, across Canada. So as the Canadian talent, or the show was hosting in Toronto, they would have the talent on, just to be a part of the show, part of their media tour, things like that, promoting the events and things. So I remember I was on a show once with a wrestler. And then the big turning point for me was, so WWE was announcing that they were going to be primetime, because you used to watch wrestling. It would be on at like 11 o'clock at night.
I remember it was like late night kind of thing. Like
primetime, basically, right? So they now had made a deal with WWE that they were going to be airing it primetime, 9 o'clock at night. So they had a big press conference in front of the Sky Dome, and they were announcing it. And so part of the thing, because I have a relationship with wrestlers and a huge like wrestling following, is they had a press conference in front of the Sky Dome. So they had this big press conference, and they were doing the show live from there. They had the press conference before, then they followed up with the show where they had live some of the talent on them. So I was on that particular show. And I remember just like, there was this one question. Now, Sable was the big woman in the WWE at the time. And they had this thing, the question was, okay, guys, who's your favorite woman in wrestling? And the crowd starts going, you. And and I look at the footage, and my face is going like, you could see me just like kind of like, oh my God, they're talking about me. That's so cool. You want to try to be cool. And I was like, and so I acknowledge it. Like, I'm like, me, I'm not even in wrestling. Like I had to acknowledge it. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I watch it back now. It's so silly. But being on that show, there was like an exposure to the wrestling world. And then following that night, I went to the actual wrestling show. I actually attended that. I made myself a Stone Cold Steve Austin 316 shirt, and
wow.
to meet a couple wrestlers, because the Off the Record show introduced me to some. So that was like my big turning point. But from that show, so internet was just starting to buzz, right? We were starting to see fitness galleries and things like that. So that's how we became famous, I guess, because we'd be in the magazines. Suddenly we're there. So I live in Toronto, but I go to Florida, and like people knew me because they were following me on the internet, or they, that was part of our, I guess, rise would be for sure the beginning of the internet.
Well, we were all over airports and grocery stores everywhere,
right? Like it was
gas stations, like in the mail for people.
For sure. So then, so the internet was also for wrestling. There was a big, wrestling. There was group chats and things like that. And so there was a report that was Trish Stratus, a fitness model, was spotted at the event and has signed a contract and will debut soon. So here I am going, run. Come here, read this.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm reading this thing. I'm like, that's so cool. And so then I'm seeing like these galleries of wrestling women, and they would suddenly be putting my pictures in there, like taking my fitness pictures. And I was like, oh my God. But I'm like, nobody's calling me. It's not like this is official. This is not a real thing at all.
Oh, so it hadn't actually been established at that point.
It was just a rumor, like internet. So in the meantime, I thought to myself, you know what, though, if they call, I would like to prepare the best possible package for them. I want it so Bob gave me this. He said, like when I did my first photo shoot, and he gave me my contract after my first photo shoot, he said, he says, preparedness meets opportunity. He says, that's a motto. Like, that's why you got this contract. And so it's something I live by. Like, we can get these opportunities. Number one, you need to be aware to recognize the opportunities. And then prepare for them. If you're not prepared for these opportunities, you're not going to be able to maximize them, right? And really take advantage of them. So for him, knowing like I'm going to give you a photo shoot, for me to like prepare and do everything from the tanning to the right bikini to the posing practice or whatever it took, that was my preparing to make sure I could maximize this opportunity and coming in totally tight and trained and everything dialed in and everything. And so for this thing, I thought, okay, well, if there's this rumor, I don't know, if someone calls me, I don't want to be like, I love wrestling. Yay, pick me. So I found this gym in Toronto called Sully's Gym. And it was one of the Canadian wrestlers I knew he had trained out of there. So I'm like, oh, so I look it up. I go down there and I show up at the door. I'm like, hi, I'd like to wrestle. And he was like,
Okay.
And he said that, like, he'll say it to this day. He was like, "Oh, look at this cute little blonde. Thinks she could be like an eyepiece, or eye candy on the show." And then I was like, "Oh no, I want to like wrestle." And then he put me right in the ring, and I trained in this like Rocky Balboa style. And it wasn't a wrestling ring, which has a bit of give. It was a boxing ring, because no give. Right. And I trained with the boys, and I was like me, and I was the only girl in there. And I was very clear, and I was like, "Don't treat me like a girl. I'm just an opponent. Like, treat me as your counterpart, and that's it." And I trained my butt off with them, and I got a good foundation to wrestle. And when they did call me finally, they flew me. I remember they flew me into Connecticut, which is Stamford, Connecticut, is like their main headquarters. They picked me up in a limousine, and I mean, listen, as a wrestling fan, there's a guy with like the WWE sign. I'm like, with my name on it. I'm like, this is so cool, like so crazy. I'm in the limousine by myself, just like, oh my God, what is happening? This is my pinch me moments, right? I'm in the WWE headquarters. There's like Hulk Hogan, The Rock, The Undertaker, all these posters. Not them. God, I would die. But the posters everywhere, you know. And I'm just like, oh my God, like how did I get here? So I sit down with Jim Ross, who was the head of the talent relations at the time. And he said, you know, it is a very physical job. There may be times where you may have to get involved. And I was like, oh yeah, no, I've been training for about 3 months now. And I think it was like a little check mark. He's like, no, noted.
Noted.
And then I went home, and then next thing you know, I got a FedEx package with the contract offer, and that was my transition. So at that point, that was in 1999. So I'd been doing fitness modeling for about 3 years at that point. And don't forget, like, so there's one other thing I'd add is the funny thing about having the fitness background is like, when they finally, like, they had called because I met someone at one of these TV tapings. I had met somebody, and he said, send your package to us then if you've been training and everything. Yeah, send it to us. So I made my own like press kit. Like, I took all my covers, took a little piece. I'm sure you did the same thing, right? And took these little pieces of your article, and it's pretty impressive because like you're like 20 something years old and you've got this like portfolio of like, because we were on like every single cover at the time because we were the go-to girls. It was crazy, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I sent that, and then that was kind of part of my thing. So then when I debuted, it was like, that's Trish Stratus, the fitness model. And that was it. It was in 2000 that I finally debuted. So that was the transition. It's crazy.
Were you the original, the first woman to kind of transition, not just be eye candy, but actually have that role?
Yeah. So, well, I was initially brought in. I was eye candy in the beginning. I was a valet, which they called
the valet. That's the word I was looking for.
So I was brought in for that. There was some women wrestlers, but like there was China at the time.
I remember China.
Yeah, but she was sort of like all on her own. There was no women's division. She was the woman, and she fought against the men, and she became women's champion. But she was a separate entity, kind of all on her own. And actually, so when I was brought in, like I knew I could do more physically, and so when I was at ballet, I was very physical in my role. I got thrown over the top rope, and I got like all kinds of things happen, choke slam from 9 feet down, like crazy things that like I was like up for it and willing to do it. But I knew I could do more. Like I knew, and like the guy, like we have agents and producers that work with us behind the scenes between each for each, like you get your segment kind of thing. And he knew, he kind of said, he saw like the fire in my eye. His name was Fit Finley. And he saw the fire in my eye, and he's like, oh, okay, and I felt like because no one's really paying attention to the girls, let's do like other stuff besides the girly slappy stuff. Let's do like cool things that like maybe would kind of pique people's interest. And then there was actually a turning point when China actually was the women's champion. She left the company and did not to return, and she took the title with her. So it was vacant. There was no division. So like as a female, you're like, I don't even have anywhere to compete to become a champion or to do. There's no chance for me to do this. And so then they decided in 2001, I think it was, they decided to have, they called the six pack challenge. And they got basically a handful of women that the only women in the company that could work. There was only 6 of us that were actually wrestlers. And I was an underdog at the time. I was very new, and because I hadn't had to actually perform. I'd learned it, but to actually perform is a whole different thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, then that was the first match they had. They were bringing back the women's title, and they decided they were going to have a new focus on the women's title. And that was when I became champion for the first time. So they basically like gave me the ball, literally like, we're going to build a women's division here. And I'm like, okay, yeah, let's do it.
They wanted to build it around you.
Well, that's what happened.
But yeah. So how cool is that you were in 2 massive industries separate in the very beginning? Have you considered that too? Like,
no, it's so crazy. Like I just say, when I say timing is everything, like it really is. Like for me anyway, my career was like being in at the beginning, and that's why we were so blown up, was because it was this new thing. There was only a handful of us doing it. And then in wrestling too, there was only a handful of women doing it. There was only 6 of us in the whole company that were like able to even do it out there. And at the time there was 1 spot on the card. Now there's more spots on the card. There's more women's wrestling. We definitely, the tone has changed, put it that way. But back in the day, we were lucky to have a match on the card. And so, you know, I decided, and with Fit Finley, he was my agent. Like I said, he basically said, you know, you can do this. And he goes, you don't need to fight like a girl. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do slaps. And it was like hair pulling and slaps. And I was like, because I know I can do. I know I can punch, and I know I can kick, and I know I can do a thing off the top rope, and I know I can obviously, you know. And so we did. And I set out to, like, I said, let's change the perception of what a female can do in the wrestling world. And so that's what sort of my mission was. And slowly but surely we got more time. And then it took a while, like, because fans were used to cheering. Like, there was a time, Monica, where one of the most popular chants when the woman came out was puppies. They would cheer for puppies. What do you think the puppies were?
Boobs.
Yes. They were cheering for my boobs, Monica. At one point, that was my big move, was my boobs. Puppies, the whole thing. And it was, oh my God. Then when I started to work more, I was like, okay, we're gonna change that. We're gonna change that. And so slowly but surely, we had to almost re-educate the fans and let them know, like,
you're talking about a bunch of boys.
Yeah, no, but we did though, Monica. We had the chance to, like, say, you know, if we go out there and actually have like a legit match and not pull each other's hair and slap and do stuff that, like, that would make the boobies look sexy. You know what I mean? We were like fighting. And so if we went out and fought a match, would people care? Would they notice? And they did. They started to notice. And it took a while because they were still chanting puppies. And I was like, I just did a really, like, kick-ass move. And what did you, you didn't even see it, you know? But over time, we had that. And so we'd have more workers that were able to put on great matches. We had the storylines were written for the females and giving us characters and storylines and integrating us into the show. So now at this point, like, the women are now responsible on their own for, like, this portion of the show, as opposed to just being part of the guys' part of the show. You know what I mean? So suddenly it did start to shift, and we started to see a shift in the female demographic. There was more females starting to watch and to come out, to the point where they were like, oh, we need to create a female merchandise line. So they would, you know, cater to the female fans now. And now, I mean, if you, back in the day, you'd hear about, like, even when I was into wrestling, nobody else liked wrestling. Like, I would talk to a wrestler, you're like, oh, you like wrestling too? Like, it was like a big thing because no females like wrestling. And you would not see in the crowd, you would not see barely any females except for the odd, you know, maybe girlfriend that got dragged to see the wrestling show, right?
Yeah, right.
But then over time, we started to see, because now there was things like, just like when we saw the fitness modeling coming out, and there was more of a relatable figure, and like then Bob that made Oxygen magazine, and people, like, it was a thing, a movement. And so suddenly in wrestling, it was a thing. The females were starting to become part of the show, and then becoming, you know, people were looking up to them, and the talent. There was like, that's my favorite part of the show was the females, and it was really cool to be a part of that, you know. And that was like part of my work, I could say, in the beginning, is what we took it from, like, this eye candy thing to, like, and I don't say my work, I mean me and the girls. There was, like, probably, like I said, a handful of us that, just like there was back in our day, but there was a handful of us that were out there determined to change the perception of what a woman could do in the ring. And it was a really good time. And if you look at what women are doing now, let's just say we did it. Absolutely.
So when you got the wrestling contract, did Bob keep you on as a fitness model for him, or were you allowed to even keep that?
I was allowed to keep it, and actually it was part of my contract that I had this other career, which gave me great clout.
They probably loved having you in all those different magazines to keep bringing new fans over. Yeah,
for sure. It was a good crossover. They enjoyed that, and I just got too busy. I wasn't able to kind of be available for photo shoots and do things with Bob anymore, and I just sort of transitioned out of the fitness world and into, it was like 300 days of the year I was on the road. Yeah. So and there was times when you would go on the road. So a schedule for a wrestler was, you would go for a live event, which is a whole crowd, like, you know, whole arena worth of people, but not televised. So that was on a Friday, you would travel to your next town on Saturday, travel to your next town on Sunday. And then on Monday, you would do the live television show, which was Monday Night Raw. And then you would do Tuesday, we would film our second show, which was SmackDown. So 2 TV tapings, 1 live show, 1 TV taping, go home for Wednesday, Thursday, back on the road Friday. That was my world. Or sometimes you were going to these and you wouldn't even go home in between. Like, it was bonkers. So yeah, I only had time to focus on the one at that point.
How did you actually train while you were doing that? Was it just that you were training in the actual ring, so you were doing so much in the ring that when you weren't in there, you probably had to rest. And of course, then you're traveling too. So how did your body hold up? And did you do any different types of training that maybe helped with, maybe the smaller muscle groups that maybe needed to have some strength to continue doing that physical piece?
It was definitely a different type of train. Like we were basically, as you know, for fitness, you're training a lot for aesthetics, like that V taper just so, and that's what I was personally training for. I know I think you were more like, you did more power stuff, but you were more training for function. I think a lot more, you were onto that longer than I was, but I was like training for just to look good on the cover kind of thing. Cause you did a lot of your, competing and stuff as well. So, but yeah. And then when now I had to train to perform. And so it was about more, stamina, agility, and then you're just on this rigorous schedule. So learning how to find that balance of like how much training to do, but knowing you'll still have a physical bout that evening, and then giving your body the right rest it needs. And then the travel on top of the travel is probably the worst. Like, the travel was probably, you were either sitting in a cramped car right after being physical in a match, and sitting in a car, like, backaches and headaches were really common for for much of my career. The turning point for my career too, when I discovered yoga, was having a herniated disc. Was basically at one point I was having back spasms, and the doctor just said, well, you have degenerative disc damage. You basically have a back of a 50-year-old. So maybe you want to change some stuff up. I was like, but that's my job. What can I do? I think a wrestler, they do like this motion. It's like a whiplash motion, which we would do like 4 to 10 times a night, 4 times a week, right? Whereas most people go in one car accident with that motion, and they're doing rehab, so we all have pretty messed up bodies. And then when I found yoga, girl, oh, what a change, what a difference. Made a big difference. So
did you have a trainer that would work with you guys on the road and help you? Were you just on your own trying to figure out how to take care of your body? Because you were still young and this was all new. Like, did you have someone that was kind of guiding you with that?
No, you were totally on your own. Like, thankfully, I had fitness. Yeah, you're just like it was like, so I started on the road at 22 years old. No, 23 years old. Was it 20? No, 22 in fitness, 24. So I was 24 years old. I couldn't even rent a car yet, but I'm flying to this town. I landed in this town, and the girl had told me before I started to get one of those big, like, we had no Expedia, it was like not like there's no like Waze apps and stuff, right? So I buy this giant map with like those coil, like, she goes, get the big one because you'll need it. So I land in this town, like in the middle of like Kansas, and I'm like, I look at like this map and I find where the arena is. I get a car, and I have to jump in with someone because I don't even have my own car, and we have to follow this map to this arena in the middle of nowhere, do our show, and then use your map to find the hotel and do, it was, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm 20 something girl in the middle of nowhere with all these men, by the way.
Yeah.
It's like so bonkers, but yeah, we figured it out. And thankfully a lot of those guys, those men, were great help. And, when you're on your road on the weekends, like those live events, you really are on your own. You're just kind of like, they care about showing up. You show up for your show. You got to be there an hour before the show. Do whatever you want. So we would train, we do whatever we want, but it's your own body, your own schedule. You're an independent contractor. So you do your own thing, get there, make sure you get there, perform. That's the only thing they care about. Make sure you're there for your performance, and then you go make sure at the next town tomorrow. See you tomorrow.
Wow. Did they were the men helpful for you as far as like, did they kind of take you under their wing as if maybe a little sister, or wanted to make sure you were protected, like looking out for you?
For sure. And a lot of people, because they'd say like, oh, did you get hit on a lot? And honestly can say I didn't, because they did look at me as like their little sis, and I guess because I had kind of like that tomboy attitude, I'm just like I was not dressed up. Like I was like in my cap and my, what I mean?
Well, you were there on a mission. You were there working, and you represented yourself well. And I think that was like, just from my initial into the bodybuilding industry, I think in the very beginning, some of the bodybuilders kind of asked me out, and I just said no. They finally realized right away, I'm there to work, make a career, do what I need to do, and be professional. And I think that men can recognize that and go, well, okay, I respect that. Yeah. And now they're going to look at the female a little bit differently, right? So
yeah, exact same thing.
You commanded respect for yourself, and you took the job as a real career, and you made it. You didn't just fluff around with it and say, oh, I'm cute and all that, but you were like, I'm making something out of this.
Yeah.
And little did you know what would actually come of all of this, right? Like you just were in it.
Yeah.
Do you mind me asking, and you don't need to share this, but I'm just curious because I know I've only been in the fitness industry and what, you know, contracts look like in that world. But what was your first contract? Do you remember what the number was? And I won't ask further from that because that's not, but I think the first contract, because it had to be a big contract. You probably had to be like, whoa.
Well, it was because of the fitness thing. It's so funny because we had, as you know, like we had a good income just by having between your appearances and various, you know, media things, and then your mail order business, right? Your fan mail business. It was, so I had to say to them, this is what I make. So you're going to take me away from this industry. So I need to make sure that's obviously, you know, I had a lawyer that worked with me as well, my first, yeah, I don't really like to share numbers and stuff, but I did one of the highest contracts as a female coming into the WWE because of my background, because I had an established business, so to speak.
Okay. That's cool.
And then obviously give me a reason to want to step away from it, kind of thing. So yeah, it worked out really well for me. Plus, the funny thing is this is like some kid from Toronto who has like never been in the wrestling world. Cause you know, there is a bit of, like, okay, even, I mean, I got lucky in fitness too. Like, you know, there's kind of a system. You do a fitness contest, you get discovered. And then, you know, that's kind of like why we do fitness contests, to get discovered. I remember training for my first fitness contest, was Bob swooped in. I kind of like sidestepped that. I kind of like, sorry, I just kind of stepped over and then ended up that. So I got very lucky in that regard. Same thing in wrestling. Like a lot of the times when people want to be a wrestler, they go train, they go in the indies, the independent leagues, and they train, like they perform in bars and in like, you know, school gyms and stuff for like many years. And then they get discovered and then they go here. So I bypassed that, like just luck, whatever, training, preparedness, who knows, whatever.
No, it was, you know, no luck, girl. It was preparedness, and it was you actually taking, you know, the bull by the horn and making something, like calling and getting on that show. Like you set yourself up for what would come for that. Like, you know, and then of course you went and did the job correctly, and you showed up the way you needed to show up, and you did the work. And so I don't, you know, I'm not a luck person. I'm like, you're blessed, you have favor, you work hard, and then the rewards are there. And I don't think luck's had anything to do with it. I think you've been very diligent and persistent, and you've had, you know, great people there helping and advising, but you took that information and did something with it.
Yeah.
You didn't just hear it and like, okay, you know.
Yeah, no, thank you. You're right. It was calculated. Every step was, in fact.
Yeah, you've worked really hard, and you know, and it shows. And you know, what a blessing to have a husband and family, and you know, the advisors that you've had over the time. But they also invested in you because they knew who you were and what your character was, your perseverance and your character.
Well, yeah, having Bob like as a mentor for that, like throughout that, and then advising me and thinking like, is this the right move for me and things like that. That was amazing, and motivating me, saying like, you could do more, and I see the performer in you, and things like that. And then I had like a lot, like you said, going back to the guys, like a lot of them did take me under their wing and saw that I could do more and that I wanted to do more. You know, I mean, I just did an interview the other day with a guy that the big turning point for me was working with this guy, and he put me through you've heard about people going through tables and stuff?
Yes.
I went through a table, and he goes, I tell the story to this day where you were like, I don't want you to go gentle. I want you to go full on. I want like this to be a thing. I want, you know, I want, so I knew I was putting on my body on the line for this business. I wanted people to know that. And so he, you know, there were so many guys, like The Rock was a huge mentor for me. You know, he basically, one day I'll never forget, he said to me, he goes, you know, he's like, you could be the female Rock. And I was like, wow. You know, like the fact, because he's a perfect blend, which I saw in Macho Man back in the day, the perfect blend of, you know, personality, theatrics, athleticism, and, you know, and charisma all together, all bundled up together. And so, you know, to hear that was like, that gave me something to totally work towards. I was like, yeah, and contributing in every way like he does. Like, so I have my great wrestling matches. I'll contribute as a character though, because I'm also going to make the storylines, speaking, like all these things you can contribute from a very holistic contribution rather than just doing like a one-sided thing in the wrestling world. So that, yeah, it was very helpful to have all that support. And of course, Ron at home, you know, as a wrestling fan, getting it just like fully understanding the road and everything.
So what was it like going through a table? And is that like a legit table, or is there, someone teaches you how to actually go through the table?
No, they don't. They just,
you're like,
you know how to be a power bomb, which is someone holds you up here and slams you to the ground. So now you just got to do it through a table. Easy peasy.
What was some of the hardest moves that you've done in the wrestling?
Well, that was pretty brutal. But in a weird way, it was like exhilarating. After I remember lying there, like going, "Oh, this is just awesome." So
I mean, really, it's like crazy.
We're definitely cut from a certain fabric. That's for sure.
Yes, yes.
I got a steel chair to the head once. That was. There's no faking that. That is what it is. Slaps are very real. Like everyone says.
A steel. Wait a minute. No, a steel chair to the head. Where did it hit you on the head?
Right on the top of my head.
And did it make you like see stars for a minute? Like, how do you respond to that?
Yeah, it did. You just lay down, and when people they see you, it's not acting. You're like full on. That was just
And so they know that you're going to be probably out for a few, like, kind of recovering for a couple seconds or a minute or whatever, right? And so then the other character, whoever that is
this is when they pantomime to the crowd. This is the moment where the crowd's booing, or I was the good guy at the time, so her doing that, she was the bad guy. They were booing her, which made them feel sympathy for it's all theatrics, Monica, right? So they sympathy for me laying on the ground. They hate her for doing that to their champion. And then so when we finally meet next week for the big pay-per-view match, they're going to be like, get her back, like that's so it's like,
would that be like your ending kind of thing? Okay, because you wouldn't have to get back up and actually try to perform after having something like that.
There's hardcore matches where they do that, and people do get up and do that, but generally a chair shot is a good finishing maneuver.
I would think so. Yeah.
Well, that's a super moment if the person gets up, because it's like there's that interpretation, like, is this even realistic? We have a suspension of disbelief at this point too, right? So I had a trash can lid to the face, which then I have these two baby teeth that are still there were no adult tooth ever came, so I had two baby teeth. Well, it knocked me out, and then it knocked my tooth out, so that was one thing. I landed on my face once, lost my other tooth. I have this really weird thumb because I broke it.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I have my dislocated shoulder, which is better now, and my herniated disc was my big injury, which I'll talk about my yoga in a second, but that was I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
My yoga helped me with that, which is still a big part of my life.
Opening the joints and stuff.
Was pretty good. And honestly, yoga was like, I think every wrestler should be like, oh, and by the way, if you want to become a wrestler, you need to be a yogi as well. You need to do yoga along the way. Do you do yoga at all? Do you incorporate yoga?
Well, I have my own style of body movement and mobility stuff that I like to do, which it's not, I don't think necessarily yoga, but it's my thing that has kept me in a good place.
Well, breath and mobility together to me is just yoga. So whatever style you do, whatever, as long as I think that's what I find now. Like people say, like, what does your workout consist of? And there was a phase where I was so busy that I wasn't like doing legit workout, particularly during the pandemic. But I always do I call my movement, right? So like I have 15-20 like movement that I do, which is, and it's yoga, but it is just connecting my breath and my movement. But I do it because I know if I don't, like, I need to keep these joints lubricated. I need to keep my body, like, agile, or else. Right.
Yeah, I've been doing for the last year, actually. Now I've been doing twice a week body weight only sessions online for fans and clients, and I participated in it I participate and coach it, and I do a lot of posture correction, glute activation, joint mobility, and stretching, and roller. Actually, I do like with the roller. So that's just twice a week and about 45 minutes in length, and so it's been kind of, something that's really been helpful for me too.
Oh, that's so great. Yeah.
What
we gotta do, we gotta keep this body in check.
I know, right? Well, before we go over there, just talk a little bit about what this, I'm going back to, I want to make sure I'm saying this. You've been inducted to the National Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame as first woman recipient, that's whooping, of the Luthez Award. So what does that mean, and how does that impact your career, or and what does that mean, like, mentally for you? Because I don't know anything about it, and I'm sorry I don't, but I know it's got to be a big thing.
I'm here for crossing over the wrestling world. I was inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame in 2013. I was like, wait, what year is it? It's hard to remember these years, right? Look at us, we're all like, what year is it?
I know. Well, we're in 2021 already, so things are like flying by
Yeah,
now.
we've done some stuff, that's for sure. So 2013, I got inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame, and I was one of the first women from my era to be ushered into that. And that was really cool because, you know, like when you retire, I retired in 2006. So when I retired, you think it's like, I'm done, my career's done, finished,
No.
and I'll do what I do now. But then, you know, when I got contacted to be, and it's you to be like acknowledged by your colleague and by the company and the industry was pretty special. So that was a pretty big moment for me to be inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame, be part of that family. And now basically WWE is like my family for life now. You know what I mean? And then this came up. I actually was supposed to be inducted last year, but that's when the pandemic started. I don't even know if this year I'm going to end up going to I can't even travel out of my country at the moment, but so we'll see what happens. It's supposed to be in the summertime. Yeah, and it's cool because it's a nationally recognized award, or a nod from the Hall of Fame. And
Wait, you said nationally. Does that mean Canadian or do you mean internationally?
Well, it is a national, like it's an American.
It's American. Okay.
Organization. But it's just, and it's very well known. It's you know, there's a lot of credibility behind it. And the award I'm getting is like Luthaz was a famous wrestler back in the day, and to the point where there's a move named after him. Like that's how big he was, kind of thing. And so they've never called it's just like there's the Hall of Fame and then there's other awards for certain achievements, and so it's the first time they're giving it to a woman.
Wow.
So it's so cool, like these barriers that we just like the women have cut, you know, to get to the point where like, oh, now we're being recognized for these men awards. You know, it's really cool. You know, it's just really special, and knowing we did the work and it paid off, you know.
Wow, that is really, really awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, so is there going to be a Stratus move that's eventually awarded?
I don't know. I mean, who knows, right?
Maybe it should be like the Stratus Inspiration Award.
The Stratosphere Award of Inspiration.
I mean, because you are inspiring millions probably across, you know, your career, and there should be a Stratus Inspiration Award. I don't know. Maybe
one day we'll see.
You're like, no, that's too soft. It has to be a hardcore move.
I mean, I have moves that are named because most wrestlers kind of name their moves, and some of the younger talent do my moves now. So there's kind of that homage that they pay to me.
So you have a move then?
I have several moves. I have a whole repertoire. I'm going to teach them to you one day, Monica.
Awesome. Episode. Wouldn't that be fun?
Can you imagine we just take you in the ring and just have like a whole like fun? Oh, I love it. That'd be so fun. You can take a horse. You ride horse.
If I knew I was going to do something like that with you, I would definitely probably get back into some of my gymnastic stuff so that I could feel like my body moves and those kind of flying through the air stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy. Imagine this. So I retired in 2006. Okay, so that's forever ago. I did a couple appearances. Like I had come in and did a guest appearance for some. Was it WrestleMania? Was it 2000? I can't remember. Whatever. After retirement, I did a little appearance. So I kind of appeared here and there. Then in 2018, there's a match called the Royal Rumble, which is a match where there's about 30 contestants, wrestlers that come into the ring. Every minute there's like a new person that comes down. And so it's like a crazy match. It's a big brawl. And so whoever wins at the end of that is like it's a big thing for them. So in 2018, they had the first ever all-female Royal Rumble. And so they called me to do that. And it had been like 7 years since I'd been in the wrestling ring. And I was like, okay, sure. Yeah. I mean, I want to be part of this history-making moment, but like, I was like, hadn't touched weights in years. I was just pure yoga at that point. And I was like a mom, and I was like, I don't know, can I do this? You know? And then, like my body's like, it's like, apparently wrestling's like riding a bike or something. But it was amazing. My body I got in the ring. I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. Like, so cool. So, and then I actually had a full on singles match. I hadn't had a singles match in 11 years. I did that 2 summers ago. I just had this I don't know, I got this itch that I just was like, I just feel like I still have it in me. And I just wanted to almost, I guess, kind of prove it to myself, because I'd done these little things along the way, but there were tag matches and spots. So you can I could do a few moves here and there, but I still kind of wanted to just if this was going to be my final outing, I wanted to just have a full on and see if I could do it and just kind of challenge myself. So I did a full on singles match with one of the best wrestlers of today's generation, which was Charlotte Flair. You might've heard of Ric Flair. Have you heard of Ric Flair? Remember him? So that's his daughter. And she's legendary.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Amazing athlete, just spectacular in the ring, just athletic. but also does the high flying stuff. Like she's incredible. And so I had a match with her in 2019 and I did it. This old lady over here with the 2 kids did it.
Your kids in the other kids on the side of the ring cheering for you at your ring.
I was getting my ass whooped. There was moments where I was like, they didn't want to watch that. I was like, I don't want my kids to see me they didn't want to see mama looking that vulnerable at times. So yeah, but it was pretty awesome to do that and go back and kind of like test it and see if I could do it. And I was like, I did it, you know.
Kind of proving to yourself that it was reality.
Yeah. And it was,
yeah, like I really still can do that.
Yeah. Age defying, you know, a little bit. So there's a bit of that.
So Tori Wilson obviously was one of the kind of original fitness girls too. And she came over into wrestling. Did you have anything to do with getting her into that space?
Actually, she was in first, but she was in as an eye candy role, period. Like she didn't do the rest. Okay. And she was in the competing. So I remember I did a shoot with Bob. It was with Tori. And I think you were there too. I think we were all together. Maybe it's the Bahamas shoot that we all did together. But we were having lunch with Bob and then another girl who's a current wrestler, Victoria. She's retired now. But she had come over. She was just a competitor at the time, a fitness competitor. And Tori, and I was like, as a fan, I was like, Tori, so tell me, you're in wrestling now. And she's like, yeah, like kind of like she'll tell you to this day. She was like, she'll tell you the story one of these days. She was very like, yeah, I'm doing this wrestling thing. I don't know what I'm doing in it. Like, it was like a gig, right? Like she got this gig that was like, you know, he gets paid a certain amount to show up on TV during this day, right? Like, and work the guy in the ring. That was like how it was a gig for her. So I was like, but do you understand? You're in wrestling. That's so cool. Do you know so-and-so? Do you know so-and-so? And I was just like totally geeking out when I saw it.
Because you knew all of them because you were going to the matches and painting, and then you had the talk show.
Exactly. I was just like so into it. Like, yeah. And so then at that point, yeah, she was like, yeah, but it's fine, I guess, you know? And I'm like, do you know so-and-so? I think that's the guy with the red tights. I'm like, no, it's, you know, it was so funny. And then, yeah. And then sure enough, I came into the other company. She was in WCW, which was Ted Turner's company at the time. And then I was in WWE or WWF at the time, but WWE. And then eventually Vince McMahon bought the other company. So then we were actually in the company together. So then we got a chance to we wrestled together, we wrestled against each other and we rode together. So that was sort of really fun. We got to, and we're like really close friends to this day. Like we stay in touch and we're there for each other for all these good things and stuff like that. So she's awesome. And yeah, I'm sure you'll speak with her one of these days and catch up on her stuff too, because she's doing really well as well.
Yeah, that would be fun. I've kind of watched some of her stuff on Instagram, and she always looks great. She always looks like she's enjoying life and putting stuff out there. So that's fun. Okay, so there's just so much here with all of that, and it's so fun to hear all the stories. Do you think at this point in your career, would you have changed anything within the fitness and WWE, like the way that everything, looking back and how everything's lined out and how you walk through everything? Is there anything that you would have done a little bit different, like maybe stayed here or there longer, or tried to do, you look back and like just everything was the way it should have been? Yeah,
I do feel like that. I felt like I was, I think the fitness industry, I think maybe I would have loved to dabble in the fitness a little bit more. I would have wanted to do a fitness competition. That was like, at one point, it was almost like, I got too busy being the end goal that I didn't get to get. I wanted to do that. So I would have liked to have done a fitness competition for sure. So that's maybe the one from the fitness world that I didn't get out of the fitness industry. And then I don't know, I thought the timing was what it was meant to be, for me to make that decision to not go back to school and then suddenly become fitness full time. And then it transitioned to wrestling. And then I don't know, I feel, and like wrestling to me is like, it's such, my girlfriend, I have a mom friend, right? So our kids go to school together. So we become mom friends. She doesn't know me as Trish Stratus. She knows me as Trish, right? And that's his mom. And there was this video when they did the video from the, I think you guys have it, but there was a video from when I won the #1 award. And she watched it and she was like, I don't know who, like that whole, it's not like, I don't know who that is. She goes, but when the video was talking, when you were talking, like she said, you had such a like light and in your eye and such a fire about you. Like you were just in your place. Like you were at home, you know what I mean? And so that's about wrestling. Like, I feel like it'll always be in my blood. I love it so much. I still watch it. I still follow it. I cheer the girls on. I've loved watching them evolve and come to this point where they're main eventing major events like the men are like used to only be men, and now the women are doing it, and I love it. I love it so much. So it's
well, it shows. I mean, and just like she said, when you speak about it, and when you're like going to the shows and, watching everything and knowing who all the characters were. And I mean, you can see that. And it's really fun to see that. And because my opinion of wrestling back when, my brother wanted to watch it and I was like, I don't want to watch wrestling. It's like, it's fun to have this other enlightened spot, or enlightened for me to just kind of hear it, feel it. And especially someone that I knew from before and admire. So, okay. So I want to do rapid fire questions with you now.
Fun.
And then we're going to take a really short break and we want to come back and talk about the other parts of your career, which have been tremendous as well. So are you ready for these rapid fire questions?
I'm ready.
Okay. So just so you guys know that you that are viewing, she has not heard any of these questions and they're just for fun. So, okay. Favorite glute exercise?
Oh, donkey kicks.
Donkey kicks. Healthy food that you refuse to eat?
Beets.
Favorite muscle mag cover?
Oh, of my own?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Okay. How do I describe? I don't know what year it was.
Do the pose. There it is.
Hold on. More glutes.
More glutes. Bring the waist up. Arch. Remember, it was arch the butt.
Arch it. Yes. Oh my God. You were like, remember that? Like completely contortioned almost.
Arch the butt. Okay. Holiday tradition you love to do with your family.
We just had Easter and I loved doing our Easter eggs, and I always save, I buy a Christmas gingerbread house, but I save it for Easter and then we decorate it for the bunny and make it all like colorful, like the pastels and stuff like that. Super fun.
How cute. I love that. Okay. Any useless talents that you can do and share?
That's a good one. Useless talents. I mean, it's not really useless. I'm really good at making popcorn, like old school oil popcorn. I'm like, it's an art the way I do it, the way it pops out, it's so light and fluffy. I would say it's useful because
it is. Do you have an actual popcorn popper, or is this on the stove?
That's like cheating. Like I do old school with the oil, the right amount of oil. You got to get the kernel pops first to make sure it's the right temperature. Then you put it's a whole thing.
Is it on the stove?
Yeah, on the stove. I'm telling you, my family is so like, this is something my mom used to do back in the day. And it'd be like popcorn night. My mom I'd watch her. She'd put the oil in just so. She'd make it just the right temperature. The one pop would come out. Then she'd put it in. You air pop it. So you lift the lid like that. Like it's a whole process. So I'm telling you, it's delicious. And
I think what we need to do is a little live section on just your popping popcorn sometime. And we'll bring you into my you'll go into your kitchen.
Okay.
And we'll have you on the show making your popcorn, because that sounds really unique.
It's really cool. I mean, I have my own, like it's a popcorn pot. Like nothing else gets made in this pot. It's just pot. It's like, how they leave the tea, it has like the residue. Well, there's something about the popcorn pot. My sister has her own popcorn pot. We all have, it's like our thing. It's so crazy.
I want to share that. That would be so fun. Okay. Out of you and your hubby, who is a good cop and who's bad cop with the kids?
Oh, he's bad cop. I'm good cop for sure.
That's awesome. If you could go back in time and relive a year of your life, either editing it or keeping it the same, which year would it be?
2006 was an awesome year. Just because it was so fun. I did everything from we were at the peak of my career. So I had awesome matches. I was traveling over the world. I also did retire. I had a bittersweet moment where I retired, but it was in my hometown crowd, like in Toronto, retired as champion. But then 2 weeks later, I got married. And so I started a new chapter. And then we went on a honeymoon. First time we could travel freely without having a schedule and having to be spray tanned. So that was an awesome year for my husband and I, and just for.
Oh, it sounds beautiful. Okay, one thing your husband does that makes you feel loved.
Let's see. Just supports me. He's he's just there for me all the time, and he's my sounding board. He's my critique. Like he'll give me critiques on my work, or even should I post this picture? You know what I mean? He'll listen to everything. He's bought every single one of my we have all my trading cards. We're collectors as generally, so we like to collect things anyway. But he's collected all my trading cards I've ever so just like that. He's just every area I can imagine. He's there and supported me, and over the years through the transition, through the kissing scenes I had to do in wrestling, all these things. He got it, and he was there for me, and he's amazing.
Oh, that's so fun. All right, we got two more. I think I've answered this myself. What works best for you, is sprint type training or the longer slow distance type of cardio for like fat burning?
Oh, probably sprint trains.
I was going to say probably sprint. And if you could leave Canada for vacation right now, where would you go?
Well, I would come to Texas so I can come visit you. We can make popcorn and hang out.
I would love it. Okay, Texas has a lot of awesome places to visit, and I would absolutely love to have you here.
Okay, one of these days we're going to do that.
Yes, that would be so fun. Okay, so we are going to take a super short break, so don't go anywhere because we've got some more topics to cover with Trish Stratus here in just a few minutes, right after our break. Come on back. All right. Well, welcome back to the Monica Brant Show. I am your host, Monica Brant, and I am speaking to the amazing, talented, and uber accomplished Trish Stratus. Hi again. So it's been so fun hearing about just all of the beginnings for you and these seemingly small beginnings and how they transferred into major careers and how you've been able to blend them so well. And speaking of blending, I know you were talking about, we were talking about how you handled keeping your body in a good working condition, which I'm sure maybe good isn't the right word, because I would assume it would be fair to good with all of the activity that you had to do in order to perform.
Yeah.
So, and yoga has been something, using that form of exercise and practice into creating healthy joints and mobility and a body that can sustain what you were doing. And then you came in with that and into creating another whole business, right? Yeah. The Stratosphere Fitness. So can you kind of transport us through how that turned out and how you managed to create a third, or maybe it's fourth or fifth, I don't even know, like business for yourself?
Oh my God, that's so funny. And you're bringing up some crazy stuff that I'm like, oh yeah, that is interesting. It's a fun self-discovery to know the journey with you, for sure. Like, as I said, when we say we create this stuff and you forget what you do, and then you do these sit downs, you're like, oh, that's kind of neat.
Yeah, it's how somebody else views it, right?
Yeah.
And I just see how you've like blended this and blended this and blended this. You have the nuts and bolts of your foundation and who you are and what you represent is all the same and is solid. And then you've blended all these other pieces that God's given you, all these talents and these abilities, and he's put people in your life that have been a support and a rock for you. And it's beautiful. And of course, now you have your family, and I'm sure that there's a whole nother piece to what you're doing with your children to instill these pieces into their lives already. So it's fun. So take us through how you blended this, exercise that you learned from your mom
right, yeah,
into WWE, keeping yourself healthy, and now another business out of that.
Well, it's funny because like really there's like a yin and yang when you look at like wrestling versus yoga, right? It's completely like opposite.